Most preppers obsess over gear lists and food storage, but here's what nobody tells you. The difference between surviving and not surviving a crisis has almost nothing to do with what you own. It's about following 11 unspoken rules that separate people who make it through from those who don't. And I'm going to be straight with you. Rule number 9 is so counterintuitive that even experienced preppers get it backwards, and it costs them everything. I'm Zach, and I've been prepping since 2012. Over those years, I've studied real survival situations, talked to people who've lived through disasters, and learned some hard lessons myself. Today, I'm breaking down the silent rules that actually matter when everything falls apart. These aren't the sexy, tactical tips you see everywhere. These are the quiet principles that keep you alive when the noise settles and reality sets in. Let's jump into rule number 1.
Rule number 1, your best gear is invisibility. Here's something most survival content gets completely wrong. Everyone talks about having the best tactical backpack, the most high-speed gear, the latest survival gadgets. But here's the truth. In a real crisis, the person with all that expensive, identifiable gear becomes the first target. Think about it this way. You're 3 days into a power outage. Most people haven't prepared at all. Suddenly, you walk through your neighborhood wearing a plate carrier, tactical pants, and a bag covered in MOLLE webbing. What message are you sending? You're broadcasting that you have resources worth taking. The concept here is called the gray man principle. But it goes deeper than just blending in with clothes. It's about understanding that in a survival situation, being unremarkable is a tactical advantage. This means your bug-out bag shouldn't look like a bug-out bag. It should look like a regular backpack someone might take to work or the gym. Back in 2019, I was helping a friend organize his preparedness supplies, and he had everything in military surplus containers with obvious labels. I asked him, if someone breaks into your garage looking for supplies, what are they going to grab first? The containers that scream tactical preparedness or the random cardboard boxes? He got it immediately and spent that weekend reorganizing everything into plain sight but unrecognizable containers. This invisibility principle extends to your vehicle too. Those window decals, advertising gun brands, prepper channels, or even hunting affiliations. They're intelligence for people who might be looking for targets. Your car should be so forgettable that nobody remembers seeing it. And this is critical. Invisibility isn't just physical, it's also behavioral. It means not being the person who brags about their prep or posts photos of their stockpile on social media. Every piece of information you share is information someone else can use against you. The best preppers I know, you'd never guess they prep at all. They drive average cars, wear normal clothes, and keep their mouths shut. That's rule number 1. Rule number 2. The 3-day window changes everything. Here's a timeline most people don't think about, but it's absolutely critical. When a disaster hits, you have roughly 3 days before the social contract starts breaking down. Why 3 days? Because that's about how long most people can cope with denial and mild discomfort before desperation kicks in. Day 1, most people think everything will be fine. They wait for help, they assume the power will come back on or the stores will reopen. Day 2, reality starts setting in. People start getting uncomfortable, hungry, thirsty, but there's still hope. Day 3, that's when you see the shift. That's when people start making desperate decisions. I learned this principle studying the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina, the Texas freeze in 2021, and other real disasters. The pattern repeats itself consistently. The first 72 hours are your window to either get to safety or lock down your position. After that, the roads become more dangerous, resources become harder to access safely, and people become unpredictable. This means your decision to bug in or bug out needs to happen fast. Not day 3, day 1, preferably within the first few hours, because everyone else is making their moves on day 3, and that's when you want to already be wherever you're going to be. Here's the practical application. When something happens, you need a decision matrix already in place. Not maybe I'll leave, not let's wait and see. You need predetermined triggers that tell you it's time to act. For me, those triggers include specific news events, local infrastructure failures, or observations about how my community is responding. The biggest mistake I see people make is waiting to see how bad it gets. By the time you know how bad it is, it's already too late to move safely. Rule number 2 is about understanding that your window of opportunity is shorter than you think.
Rule number 3. Water is your first, second, and third priority. Everyone knows water is important, but most people still don't treat it with the urgency it deserves. Your body can survive 3 weeks without food if necessary. You'll be miserable, weak, and hungry, but you can survive. Without water, 3 to 4 days, and that's in ideal conditions. In heat or while physically active, you might have less than 48 hours. But here's what makes this rule silent. It's not just about storing water. It's about having multiple redundant methods to source and purify water that don't rely on things working. Let me explain what I mean. Most people's water plan looks like this. Store some bottled water, maybe have a filter. That's not a plan, that's a starting point. A real water strategy has layers. You need stored water, yes, but you also need to know where natural water sources are in your area. You need multiple purification methods that don't depend on electricity or fuel. You need containers to collect and transport water. And you need to understand how much water you actually need. Here's a number that surprised me when I first calculated it. A single person needs about 1 gallon per day for drinking and basic hygiene. That's just baseline survival. If you want to cook, clean dishes, or maintain any real hygiene, you're looking at 2 or 3 gallons per person per day. For a family of 4, that's 8 to 12 gallons daily. For 30 days, you're talking about 240 to 360 gallons. That's heavy, bulky, and takes up enormous space. This is why your water strategy can't just be storage. You need renewable sourcing. Back in 2016, my area had a water contamination scare. Nothing serious ultimately, but for about 4 days, we were under a boil water notice. I watched people flood the stores trying to buy bottled water that was already gone. Meanwhile, I filled every container I had from the tap before the notice went into effect, and I had my filtration systems ready. I wasn't worried because I'd already thought through this exact scenario. The practical steps here are straightforward but often overlooked. First, store what you can. I keep a rotating supply of bottled water and several 5-gallon containers that I cycle through. Second, have at least 2 different purification methods. I have a gravity-fed filter system, purification tablets, and the knowledge to build a basic charcoal and sand filter if needed. Third, know your local water sources. Where are the streams, ponds, or retention basins near you? Even a swimming pool can be a water source in an emergency if you can purify it. Rule number 3 is simple. Secure water first, or nothing else matters. Now, before we continue with the rest of these rules, I want to share something with you that ties directly into what we're talking about. Because I know how overwhelming preparedness can feel, especially when you're trying to figure out priorities and you're working with a limited budget. I put together a completely free guide that walks you through something I wish I'd had when I started prepping. It's called the $50 Food Supply Guide, and it reveals how to turn just $50 into a 90-day food supply for when life gets unpredictable. This isn't some theoretical plan. It's the exact shopping list with specific brands and prices, 37 essential preparedness items most people never think about, and the simple storage methods that work in any home or apartment, even if you think you don't have space. The guide includes emergency meals you can prepare with 0 cooking fuel or electricity, storage strategies to keep everything fresh for years, and a step-by-step approach to scaling from 1 week to 3 months with confidence. It's all yours completely free. I'll drop the link in the description and pin it in the comments. Just let me know where to send it, and it's yours. All right, let's get back to these critical survival rules.
Rule number 4. Calories are currency in a crisis. Here's a concept that doesn't get nearly enough attention. In a survival situation, your energy is finite, and every action costs calories you may not be able to replace easily. This fundamentally changes how you should think about every decision you make. Most people approach survival with an action movie mindset. They imagine themselves doing all these physical tasks, building elaborate shelters, hiking long distances, engaging in confrontations. But the reality is that if food is scarce, Every unnecessary movement is borrowing from a bank account you can't replenish. Let me give you a practical example. Say you're in a bug-in situation and you need to decide whether to walk 3 miles to check on a potential resource or stay put and conserve energy. The walk itself might burn 300 to 400 calories depending on terrain and your body weight. That's roughly the equivalent of a full meal. Is the potential resource worth a full meal of energy? Maybe yes, maybe no, but you need to think in these terms. This is where a lot of preppers go wrong. They plan for activity levels that aren't sustainable. They think they'll be out hunting, gathering, fortifying, patrolling. But if you're burning 3,000 calories a day and only have 1,500 calories of food available, you're in an energy deficit that'll catch up to you fast. Within 2 weeks, you'll be weak. Within a month, you'll be struggling to function. The smart approach is to think like an efficiency expert. Every task should serve a purpose that justifies its caloric cost. This means organizing your space so you minimize unnecessary movement. It means doing tasks in batches so you're not making multiple trips. It means resting when you can rest, because rest costs almost nothing caloristically. I learned this lesson during an extended camping trip I did to test my gear and skills. I planned to be super active, gathering firewood, exploring, fishing, all that. But I only brought the food I planned to eat in a survival scenario. By day 4, I was exhausted. By day 6, I was rationing my movements because I could feel my body running low on fuel. That experience completely changed how I think about survival situations. Rule number 4 means being lazy with purpose. It means choosing efficiency over activity. It means understanding that in survival, doing less is often doing more.
Rule number 5, the fire paradox. Fire is simultaneously one of your most valuable resources and one of your biggest vulnerabilities. Understanding when to use it and when to go without is a skill that could save your life. Let's talk about what fire gives you. Obviously, warmth. In cold conditions, fire can be the difference between surviving the night and hypothermia. Fire also purifies water, cooks food, provides light, and offers psychological comfort. Those are significant benefits. But here's the other side. Fire also broadcasts your position. Smoke can be seen from miles away, especially during the day against a clear sky. The light from flames can be spotted at night from even farther. The smell of wood smoke carries on the wind. And if you're trying to maintain a low profile, fire works directly against that goal. The rule here isn't never use fire. It's understand the trade-offs and make intentional choices. Are you in a remote enough location that detection isn't a concern? Then fire away. Are you in a scenario where other people are a threat? Then you need to weigh whether the benefits outweigh the risks. There are ways to minimize fire's signature if you must use it. A Dakota fire hole, for instance, is a design that reduces smoke and hides flames below ground level. Burning dry hardwood instead of green wood reduces smoke. Building your fire in a location with natural concealment, like a ravine or heavy tree cover, helps. Using fire only during hours when smoke is less visible, like dusk or dawn, can be strategic. But here's the deeper principle. You should have the skills and gear to survive without fire, if necessary. Can you stay warm enough with proper clothing and shelter? Can you eat food that doesn't require cooking? Can you purify water without boiling? If your survival depends entirely on fire, you're vulnerable. I remember a winter camping trip where I challenged myself to go 48 hours without fire. It was cold, around 20 degrees at night. I had to rely entirely on my clothing layers, my sleeping bag, and building a proper shelter. It was uncomfortable, but it proved to me that I could do it if I had to. That knowledge is valuable because it means fire becomes a choice, not a necessity. Rule number 5 is about understanding fire's double edge and having the flexibility to use it or not based on the situation.
Rule number 6, silence is a survival skill. Most people dramatically underestimate how far sound travels, especially at night or in an otherwise quiet environment. A normal speaking voice can carry 300 feet or more in good conditions. The clang of a pot or the crunch of footsteps on gravel can travel even farther. A dog barking can be heard for over a mile. These sounds give away your presence and potentially your activities. In a true survival scenario, especially one where security is a concern, noise discipline becomes critical. This isn't about paranoia. It's about understanding that sound is information, and every bit of information you give away is information someone else can use. Think about what your normal camp sounds reveal. Pots and pans tell someone you're cooking, which means you have food. Voices tell someone how many people are in your group. The sound of a generator tells someone you have fuel and power. Even the click of a flashlight switch or the rustle of a tent zipper gives away your position and activity. Maintaining silence requires conscious practice. It means moving deliberately, setting items down gently, communicating in low voices or hand signals, and being aware of what your environment amplifies. Metal on metal is particularly loud. Hollow containers act like drums. Certain surfaces, like dry leaves or gravel, are naturally noisy. Here's a practical exercise I recommend. Spend an evening at your home or camp trying to do normal activities completely silently. Make a meal, organize gear, move around. You'll quickly discover all the small noises you never noticed before. That awareness is the first step toward noise discipline. But this rule extends beyond just camp sounds. It also means controlling light, which is visual noise. A flashlight beam or even the glow of a phone screen can be seen from surprisingly far away at night. If you must use light, red filters preserve night vision and are less visible from a distance. Shielding your light source so it only illuminates what you need also helps. The principle here is that in survival, being unnoticed is often better than being noticed. And silence, both auditory and visual, is how you stay unnoticed. Rule number 7. Always have a back door. This rule is simple but often overlooked. Never put yourself in a position where you only have one way out. Whether we're talking about a physical location, a plan, or a strategy, you need alternatives. Let's start with the physical application. If you're bugging in, your home needs at least 2 exits that you can use in an emergency. That sounds obvious, but how many people have actually tested their secondary exits? Are they blocked by storage? Can every member of your household actually use them? Do you have tools to open them if they're stuck or blocked from the outside? I learned this lesson years ago when I was organizing my basement storage. I had stacked supplies in front of the basement window, which was technically a secondary exit. One day I smelled smoke. Turned out to be nothing serious, just a neighbor burning leaves. But my immediate thought was, could I get out through that window if I had to? The answer was no, not without moving several heavy containers first. I reorganized that same day. The same principle applies if you're bugging out. Never take a route that doesn't have alternatives. If you're planning to evacuate on a specific highway, what happens if that highway is gridlocked, blocked, or dangerous? You need to have mapped out alternate routes, even if they're slower or less direct. You need to have multiple destination options in case your primary location isn't accessible. But this rule goes beyond physical exits. It's also about strategic flexibility. Your plans should have contingencies. If your water source becomes contaminated, what's your backup? If your primary food storage is compromised, do you have alternatives? If your group loses a key member, can you still function? The military calls this redundancy. Preppers should think the same way. 1 is none, 2 is 1. If you only have a single solution to a critical problem, you don't actually have a solution, you have a point of failure waiting to happen. Rule number 7 is about never backing yourself into a corner, whether physical or strategic. Rule number 8, people are the variable. Here's something that took me years to fully understand. Disasters are predictable, but people aren't. You can prepare for the storm, the earthquake, the power outage. Those follow physical laws. But how humans behave under stress, that's the wild card. Most survival planning focuses on the disaster itself. How much water do I need? What gear should I have? How do I stay warm? Those are all important questions, but they assume the main challenge is environmental. In reality, the biggest threat in almost any extended crisis situation is other people. This isn't about being cynical or misanthropic. It's about being realistic. When people are scared, desperate, or hungry, they behave in ways they wouldn't under normal circumstances. Some people rise to the occasion and become more helpful and community-minded. Others become dangerous, and you won't always know which is which until it's too late. The principle here is that you need to pay as much attention to human behavior as you do to the disaster itself. That means being aware of your surroundings, watching for signs of desperation or aggression, and understanding crowd dynamics. Let me give you a specific example. After a hurricane knocks out power to your area, the first day or two, people are generally helpful. There's a sense of community, of being in this together. But as resources become scarce and help doesn't arrive, that dynamic changes. You start seeing more aggressive behavior at distribution points, more break-ins, more desperation. Understanding this timeline helps you make better decisions about when to stay visible and when to keep your head down. This also means being careful about who you trust. Trust is earned over time, not given freely. Just because someone seems friendly or helpful doesn't mean they have good intentions long-term. Watch for consistency between what people say and what they do. Pay attention to how they treat others, not just how they treat you. And be very cautious about revealing what resources you have. Here's an uncomfortable truth. Advertising your preparedness before a crisis is foolish, but advertising it during a crisis is dangerous. If people know you have food, water, or security, you become a target. This is why the gray man principle from Rule 1 is so important. The best security is not needing security because nobody knows you have anything worth taking. Rule number 8 is about recognizing that the human element is the most unpredictable and often the most dangerous aspect of any survival situation.
Rule number 9. Routine is a weakness. Here's a rule that surprises a lot of people. Predictability makes you vulnerable. If you establish routines that can be observed and predicted, you create opportunities for others to exploit. Think about your normal daily life. You probably leave for work around the same time each day. You shop at the same stores. You take the same routes. That predictability is fine in a stable society with rule of law. But in a crisis situation, being predictable is dangerous. Why? Because if someone is watching, either for opportunity or with ill intent, patterns tell them everything. If you leave your home at the same time every day, that's when you're vulnerable. If you go to the same water source at the same time, someone can be waiting. If you keep supplies in the same obvious location, that's the first place they'll look. The solution is to vary your patterns, change your routes, alternate your timing, mix up your routines so there's no predictable pattern to exploit. This applies to everything from when you cook meals and the smoke becomes visible to when you check your perimeter, to how you store your supplies. I practice this in small ways even now. I take different routes when I drive regularly. I don't post about my schedule on social media. I keep my preparedness supplies distributed in multiple locations rather than all in one obvious place. These habits build the mindset of unpredictability that could matter in a crisis. This rule also applies to defensive measures. If you have a security routine, like checking doors at a certain time or rotating watch schedules, those patterns can be observed and exploited. Mix it up. Be random in your timing. Don't let anyone, friend or foe, be able to predict your movements or actions. Rule number 9 is about understanding that patterns are vulnerabilities and intentionally breaking them. Rule 10. Patience is the ultimate survival skill. If I could only teach someone one survival skill, it might be this: the ability to wait. Patience isn't exciting. It doesn't look good in movies. It's not something you can buy at a store. But it's often the difference between surviving and not surviving. Here's why patience matters so much. In a crisis, there's enormous pressure to act, to do something, to make things happen. But action without thought is often worse than inaction. Rushing leads to mistakes. Panic leads to poor decisions. Impatience reveals your position or depletes your resources unnecessarily. The most successful survivors aren't the most aggressive or the most active. They're the ones who can assess, plan, and wait for the right moment to act. They're the ones who can sit in discomfort without making it worse through hasty decisions. Let me give you a scenario. You're bugged in during a crisis. You hear gunshots in the distance. Every instinct might tell you to go investigate, to secure your perimeter, to take action. But the patient response is to do nothing. Stay quiet, stay hidden, let the situation develop. Going out to investigate might put you directly in harm's way. Waiting costs you nothing and preserves your safety. Or another scenario, you're low on supplies and you know there's a store that might still have resources, but there are also a lot of other people with the same idea and the situation looks chaotic. The impatient person goes anyway because they need supplies now. The patient person waits, watches, and either finds a better opportunity or finds an alternative solution entirely. Patience also applies to long-term survival. If you're rationing food and you're hungry, the temptation is to eat more than your ration allows. But patience means sticking to the plan, trusting that the discomfort of hunger today is better than running out of food tomorrow. I've practiced this skill through fasting and through deliberately putting myself in uncomfortable situations where I have to wait. It builds mental resilience. It proves to yourself that you can handle discomfort without reacting hastily. Rule number 10 is recognizing that often the best action is no action. Patience isn't passive, it's active discipline.
Rule number 11. Your mind is your primary weapon. Here's the final rule, and it's the one that ties everything else together. All the gear, all the food, all the skills in the world won't save you if your mind breaks. Mental resilience, the ability to maintain clarity and purpose under stress, is the single most important factor in survival. This is what most prepping content completely misses. Everyone focuses on the physical, what to store, what to carry, what skills to learn. But survival is fundamentally psychological. It's about maintaining hope when things look hopeless. It's about making rational decisions when you're scared or exhausted. It's about finding the will to continue when every part of you wants to give up. There's a concept in survival psychology called the rule of threes. You can survive 3 minutes without air, 3 hours without shelter in harsh conditions, 3 days without water, 3 weeks without food. But you know what's not in that list? The thing you can't survive without even for 3 seconds? Purpose, reason, the will to live. Viktor Frankl, who survived Nazi concentration camps, wrote about this in his book, Man's Search for Meaning. He observed that the prisoners who survived weren't necessarily the strongest or the healthiest. They were the ones who had a reason to survive, a purpose that pulled them forward. That psychological resilience was more powerful than physical advantages. So how do you build mental resilience? First, by experiencing manageable levels of discomfort regularly. If you never challenge yourself, you don't know what you're capable of. Go camping in bad weather. Fast for a day. Do something physically demanding. These experiences prove to yourself that you can handle difficulty. Second, by cultivating purpose beyond yourself. If your only reason for surviving is yourself, that's a fragile motivation. But if you're surviving for your family, for your children, for a mission you believe in, that's a much stronger foundation. Third, by practicing mental skills just like physical ones. That means stress inoculation, visualization, meditation, whatever works for you to maintain mental clarity under pressure. Your mind is like a muscle. If you don't train it, it will fail you when you need it most. And finally, by accepting ahead of time that survival will be uncomfortable, difficult, and probably unfair. If you go into a crisis expecting it to be easy or for help to arrive quickly, you're setting yourself up for psychological failure when reality doesn't match expectations. But if you've already accepted that it will be hard, you're mentally prepared for the challenge. Rule number 11 is understanding that mindset isn't just important, it's everything. Your gear might fail. Your plans might fall apart. Your supplies might run out. But if your mind stays strong, you still have a chance. So, there you have it. 11 silent rules that no one talks about, but that could mean the difference between making it through a crisis and not. Let me recap them quickly. Rule 1. Your best gear is invisibility. Don't advertise what you have or who you are. Rule 2. The 3-day window changes everything. Make your critical decisions early, before the chaos begins. Rule 3. Water is your first, second, and third priority. Everything else is secondary. Rule 4. Calories are currency. Every action costs energy you may not be able to replace. Rule 5. Understand the fire paradox. Know when to use it and when going without is safer. Rule 6. Silence is a survival skill. Control both noise and light to avoid giving away your position. Rule 7. Always have a back door. Never put yourself in a position with only one option. Rule 8. People are the variable. Pay as much attention to human behavior as the disaster itself. Rule 9. Routine is a weakness. Predictability makes you vulnerable. Rule 10. Patience is the ultimate survival skill. Often, the best action is no action. And Rule 11. Your mind is your primary weapon. Mental resilience trumps everything else. These aren't the flashy rules. They're not about the latest gear or the coolest techniques, but they're real. They're based on actual survival situations and the patterns that emerge again and again. If you haven't already grabbed that free guide I mentioned earlier, now's a great time. It's the $50 food supply guide that shows you exactly how to build a 90-day food reserve even on a tight budget. The link's in the description and pinned in the comments. It's completely free, and it complements everything we talked about today, especially that principle about making preparedness accessible and practical, not overwhelming. If this video gave you value, do me a favor and hit that like button. It helps more people find this content. Drop a comment and let me know which of these 11 rules surprised you most, or if there's a rule you think should be on this list that I didn't cover. And obviously, subscribe to Zach of All Trades if you want more practical, no-nonsense preparedness content that cuts through the hype and gives you real strategies. Remember, prepping isn't about fear. It's about being ready so you can live your life with confidence, knowing that whatever comes, you've done the work to protect yourself and the people you care about. These 11 silent rules are part of that foundation. Stay prepared, stay smart, and I'll see you in the next one.